Hello, welcome to today's LinkedIn Learning Break, L&D Made Easy with Lindt Australia, presented by Litmos. Thanks everyone for taking the time to join us today on LinkedIn. We hope you're as excited as we are to get this conversation going. While we wait for more folks to trickle in, I'll just get started by introducing you to today's panelists and providing a few housekeeping notes. Today, our host is Litmos' Chief Learning Officer, Dr. Jill Stefaniak, and our special guests are Litmos customers Lindt Australia, People and Culture Manager Robin Rodriguez, and Lindt Australia's People and Culture Coordinator, Nicole Rebick. Myself and the rest of the Litmos team will be monitoring the LinkedIn comments during this live presentation, and we'll do our best to respond to your questions as they come in. And this session will be recorded and will be hosted on our LinkedIn business page, so keep an eye on that. You can also check out litmos.com to see the recording on our webinar page. Now, without further ado, I will hand it over to Dr. Jill Stefaniak. Take it away.
Thanks, Liz. And so I just want to take a brief moment. My role at Litmos is to work with our leadership in making sure that all of the learning solutions that we design and that we offer our customer bases are grounded in sound instructional design and learning science. And I'm really excited to talk to Lindt Australia today and to talk with Robin and Nicole to learn more about their learning story and their learning journey along the way as we strive to make L&D easy for everyone. So Robin and Nicole, if you want to just take a moment and share with our audience today your roles at Lindt Australia, and then we'll get started learning more about your story.
Great. Thanks, Jill. Thanks for having us all today. We're really excited to share our people and culture journey and how we develop our people, which has been really fundamentally important within Lindt and our growth and making sure that our people thrive. So my main role, I came on to Lindt probably about 5 years ago, was really to build the people capability. We have a unique business where we have many different sectors, so head office, retail, production, and we also have a field team. So it was really looking at how we could encompass that everybody could thrive within the business. So that's primarily about what we've been working on for the last 5 years with the help of Litmos.
And I'm Nicole Rebick, so I'm the People and Culture Coordinator. So I've been with Lindt for a year now. So I work very closely with Robin, and so I look after a lot of the talent acquisition. L&D as well is a big part of my portfolio as well. And yeah, for me, I just help out a lot in the team, and I'm really engaged with the growth and development of our company within the L&D space.
Wonderful. Well, let's get started. So one of the things that we kind of want to talk about is we're looking at how do we make L&D easy, or how do we make it easier for everyone, make it easier for our learners, our employees, and for our leadership that are trying to track all of these things and link everything to overall business goals. Can you share with us what Lindt was doing before using Litmos?
Prior to using Litmos, we were pretty much a manual sort of system. We were doing workshops, lots of different sections of the business of people who weren't really capable of delivering an L&D training, but were just like, oh, over to you. We need someone to do it, so over to you. So we were really looking at something that could help us. Also, we have a great deal of compliance laws within Australia, so food safety, which we need to look after, and all of those pieces. So we really needed to look at a function that would take the manual away, would stop us saving lots of papers and everyone faxing in. If everyone remembers faxes, we were still using those back then, and emailing them in or scanning them in and keeping them hard copies. And then, we were just talking the other day, we actually have to go and clean out a storage that has about 600 boxes of just kept files. And it was like, well, this has got to be easier. And there has to be a platform that we could actually look at that could actually meet all of our needs. And that's where we sort of ventured out at that stage, saying, okay, we have to make L&D a lot easier.
As you've expanded on your L&D strategy, what have been some of your goals for L&D within your organization?
One of the things, I think one of the misnomers about Lindt is that we're a huge organisation, and we are globally a huge manufacturing organisation. We're really passionate about our purpose to enchant the world with chocolate. And so that was a big piece. But we're actually quite small on the ground. So if you look at Australia as a whole, at the time when we started Litmos, we needed something that was quite small. that could help us meet all our needs, because we only had 200 employees. Although we had a retail, we had a wholesale business and production, we only had 200 employees. So we needed to look for something that we start with that was small enough to meet our needs, because we couldn't develop all our own learning and development. We need to look for an organisation that actually could provide some of that development for us and create some really good modules regarding compliance. So Litmos ticked that box really successfully. And then we also needed to look at an organisation or a platform that could help grow when we were growing. So now we're just over, within Australia, 500 employees. And we also needed to look at an organisation that could help us get those individuals who we labour hire, which we used a lot in our manufacturing, and we could also reach out to them and meet their needs. So it was really a unique platform we were looking for. It couldn't be too big, because when it was too big, they weren't really interested in dealing with us for somewhat, and creating the uniqueness that we needed, like that, the tailoring it to us. So we're really looking for a platform that could grow with us, and fundamentally develop our people and help our people grow, which that wasn't happening in the past. In the past, it was very much, well, here it is, here's your static piece of paper, this is what you need to do, tick all the boxes. We needed to look for a platform where if I wanted to grow in a particular area, I could actually jump online, see some things that I could interest me. So if I was in finance, I could look at Excels and 101 in Excel all the way through, and Litmos actually met that need. And we didn't have to create the content. It was actually them creating it, helping us create it for us, and it was already on the platform. So for a small business in that sense, it was really wonderful.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's always nice when you've got that catalog, so that you're not starting from scratch with some of these things as well. Where has Lindt seen or experienced L&D success?
I think we've seen one of the biggest areas. I think for a corporate in head office, there's success there all the time, because there's always people that are interested in their growth there in the head office. But where we found it really difficult was our manufacturing. They were more blue-collared workers. Their educational standard was slightly different, and it was like they were stuck. And so we found, and so same in our retail stores, it just appeared that they got stuck in those places. So what we found Litmos has been able to do is help us reach out to those individuals and start educating them. And we've actually seen great success of those individuals within becoming team leaders, moving on from a team leader, becoming heading up a line within our production, and then moving into head office. And I think that would have been one of our greatest, for me personally, one of our greatest successes within head office. It's pretty simple. The guys are pretty keen. A lot of them have university degrees, so it's keen to get them on board to get to the next level. But for those at the lower end of our of the workforce, to actually tap into their potential and help them grow, that was fundamentally one of the things that Litmos really supported us in doing. And it was looking at talent that we didn't even realize was there, because we hadn't been looking and we hadn't been sourcing, but they were able to jump online and develop themselves and grow.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's wonderful. And again, you see that fusion between L&D and talent acquisition, right? With your succession planning, career development, and again, coordinating all those different roles and establishing what are those training paths look like for different individuals within your organization. That kind of leads into my next question I have for you. What are some of the training strategies and formats that have worked best for Lindt, especially as you're coordinating different individuals and different roles within your organization?
I think what we've been able to do is really look at a target our training to each market or each individual section of the business. So I think what Litmos has allowed us to do is, rather than just saying here's a one size fit all, it's like really going back and analysing it, and with the help of Nicole, identifying what is it that retail really need. And what retail needed was not to see a head office compliance course where we were dealing with people sitting in an office, but how did it actually relate to them within a retail environment? And so they didn't go, yeah, but that just happens in the office. This is the real world in retail. And the same as what production was. So it really allowed us to develop individual strategies for each of our departments, even within head office. So if we were looking at a finance stream, we were able to take our performance pieces, our IDPs that were being developed for our teams, and saying, what do we need on our Litmos platform that will help the finance team grow? Because these are the areas we're looking at our team people telling us where they want to grow. So how can we help develop them? So that was a really good being able to develop strategies for each section of the business rather than one overall strategy and one overall goal, because we were finding they were all different. And so therefore one strategy wasn't going to work and one platform or area wasn't going to work. So we really needed to tailor that training, which was fundamentally really important. And also I think on that is making the look and feel relatable to them in the training, which is also something that Litmos has allowed us to do.
That's wonderful. And you've kind of already you've already hinted at it as you've mentioned the word teams, because we talk to some L&D individuals within organizations, and sometimes, especially if it's a smaller business, sometimes they feel like they're an army of one, really trying to push that L&D strategy. And we know that the most successful L&D stories usually have leadership buy-in across the organization, and they have that integration. And you've just hinted at that, talking about your teams and asking for, what are their needs and what makes the most sense for their employees. Can you, if we can move to the next slide, I was going to say, if we can kind of just talk about what are some of those strategies that you employ to get everyone on board, to make sure that everyone was aware of what the L&D strategy was going to be, and how best L&D could support their efforts within Lindt.
I think the first thing that we really needed to do, firstly, there was no real, hey, we don't need it. I think everyone across the board understood that we needed to build our people. As we had a new CEO come on board with Michael Scheider, and we really needed to make sure, hey, we're going to build the business. We need to build our people, and we need to identify key individuals that could help support us do that. So I don't think there was any pushback as such. It was just what was the right tool for us to do. So it was really sitting down with each of our departments and understanding what they didn't need it from a platform and what they thought was missing from their teams. It was also understanding within a production team. So to your point, we're two people in L&D, really, Nicole and I. And so, with 500 people, we needed other people to help support us. But we also understood that, production line managers, that's what they're good at, being production line managers. They weren't always good at training, and so we really had to understand what was the gap with them and how do we help develop them too. So we needed a tool that would develop those people at times who had to deliver the learning. Mm-hmm. So we really sat down with those groups of individuals and understood what everyone's needs were and how they were differing and where they were aligning to help us do that. And so it was a bit of a strategy for every department. I think that was the one thing that Litmos was able to deliver that other places weren't, is that they were able to deliver independent strategies across the board. We didn't need as I mentioned earlier, one strategy. It was this strategy meets for our production line. Litmos can help us here and they can support us in this area. And they also are developing content that helps production teams. And it was around the world, right? So it wasn't just like what the compliance is in the US is very different to what it will be in Australia, but they were actually meeting our market needs. And it's the same as retail. So we developed separate strategies and we understood the level of the learning and what levels each of the departments were in. So we also did that sort of research. And then we came back and said, well, this is the tool that we're really looking for before we went out to market.
Wonderful. We've got some interest. We've got some great questions popping up in the chat. I want to take a moment because they're interested, especially as you were talking about making that shift from paper to online, and especially with so many of your frontline workers in manufacturing. Did you have an engagement strategy? Did you use, or what was your approach to that? Going from Lisa's asking, going from paper to online can be hard for frontline workers with on-the-job training. Did you encounter any challenges with that, or how did you get buy-in for that one?
I think what we launched to our head office team pretty fundamentally first. So we just launched it because we knew we'd have engagement with that group of people. But what I did is we looked at some areas within the business. So our safety and compliance manager was the one that we targeted, Steve Wren. We actually targeted him and said, what are you doing now? And what we found he was doing was lots of toolbox talks that were taking him over, half an hour to do. But we had core staff. So we had individuals that were coming in that were labor hire. So he would have to go the next day and retrain all of those. So we really sat down with him and said, look, we can make this easier for you. We can actually put some of these courses online, and we can then see the engagement. You'll be able to see who signed off really, really easily. It won't be manual, and it will save you a lot of time. He was a bit bar humbug, to be honest, to start with, but I think we needed one. I mean, I'm really, the TED Talk, the lone nut comes to mind. We really needed one guy that we could say, let us show you. We'll do all the work for you. Let us help show you the way. And we did that. And so the first year we just took his pure documents and we just put them online. And from that point on, we were saving lots of hours of his time. We were also making sure that every member of our workforce, because we could track it, were done. We worked out there was some bit of, they couldn't all jump online. So we ordered more computers downstairs. So we made it at the beginning of their shift that they could come in, they could jump online. And then the second year of that, after we saw a really good compliance and completion rates, we were audited. And we're audited not only by Lindt globally, who come in and check our manufacturing, but also, from our compliance pieces from the government within Australia. And we had outstanding results in training and completion records, and they were really easy to grab. So from that point, he was on board, and that made the rest of the flow really, really easy. And it made it easy for then to really engage from not only a safety perspective, but we had the team leaders and the team managers of production going, okay, this is what we want to create. Because the other thing we were finding hard was, especially during COVID, it was going around and around where we were having lots of staff coming in and out. We lost a lot of staff back to overseas. And so how were we going to retain that talent that was in the manufacturing and onlines? So they were starting coming, hey, can we start developing some courses for our teammates so we can help them grow, because we can't find team leaders. We can't hire them. They're just not here. So we then realized, well, during COVID, we need to develop our people. And so that's what we started to do as well. And so it just slowly, progressively got them on board. But I think the key was getting one individual within that market on board, and the rest just sort of followed, because it was easy to see the benefits that they were getting out of it.
And then you've got that champion within the organization that can answer those questions and say, the world has not come to an end. It's working. We're seeing positive results.
Yeah, and I think, sorry, to that point, I think too, during COVID, I mean, we had the world's longest lockdowns, but our manufacturing team were the ones that were always there. So that was also sort of a bit of a benefit for us, because we then started going, hey, we can invest in you at the same time, whilst you're the only ones that are around. So that was really key, because everybody else was working from home.
Neil's got a question. A lot of people are very interested with the production teams. Can you just kind of walk us through what it looked like? How would the production team interact with the LMS not being behind a computer during the day? You'd kind of mentioned having some times available before shifts for them to complete training.
Yeah, so pretty much we run two shifts. We have a day shift and we have an afternoon shift. We found that, it was hard, and we certainly didn't want them doing any of their training at home. We thought it was important that they were doing it in their own environment within the workplace. So one of the things that we did do was we bought a lot more computers. So we actually invested in tablets, because it's really LMS, Litmos is really good that way as well. It can be used on any device, so that made it a lot easy. So we purchased, the operations director purchased some computers, we put them downstairs. We got some tablets that we put downstairs, and what we allowed them to do is at the beginning of their shift, they're allowed to jump on. It's really cool now actually to go downstairs and watch during their lunch period some of the younger guys jumping on and doing other courses than what that Litmos provide that we don't. But they're actually jumping on board and not just doing the compulsory stuff, but actually doing other things as well. So those computers are set up in their kitchen, in their lunchroom, which is a large room, and they're able to jump on at any time. But it was making it accessible to them and giving them the time to do it.
Oh, that's fantastic. So that you kind of have those, it's great because you just see that continuing learning occurring too as they're working on that, kind of like having different stations set up.
Yeah, and the good thing too was that we didn't, I mean, one of the things I think is like the shutdown of the line. We can't afford a line to be shut down. Everyone will know that in manufacturing, even though all we do is package, we don't make any chocolate here. We spin our Easter eggs, but that's about it. We can't afford a line to be shut down. So what was happening though, when Steve was doing the manual version before, we were shutting down lines because we were pulling people off lines and saying, right, you've got to sit in an hour, half an hour, or we would run a whole heap of training. Let's do bang for buck, and we're going to do an hour and a half online workshop training. We moved that online, meant that people could actually come in off the line easily to just sit down, and it wasn't shutting down a line for over an hour and a half, and it was making sure that the training was done as well. So that was really beneficial, moving it online.
Are you finding now that people are getting more familiar with that too? Are you finding, you mentioned some of the younger ones on their lunch breaks participating in more training. Are you seeing where more training's being assigned to them as they're, you mentioned earlier, kind of like linking things to, career development or those opportunities? Are you seeing where they're taking a more proactive approach with wanting to engage in training?
Yes, and I think the other thing that we found is that we had a development program that was only really, and our review system was only really developed for our head office and our senior team leaders. It didn't go all the way down to the line. One of the great things that we've been able to do, because we can support them with training, is then go, okay, well, there's a lot of pool of talent there that we're not even looking at the moment because we don't know. So we actually then move some of our put goals and KPIs in place for them that was relatable to them, which they had never had before. And so then they started to get to understand that, hey, I'm not just a person that's working on a line. There's actually a career here for me. I could actually do something else that I haven't possibly had the opportunity to do before. And interesting that when you look at people within manufacturing and on those lines, a lot of those were migrant workers. And so those migrants, English wasn't their first language, but Litmos has been able to, translate it into their language as well. So that's been a really great tool as well, that we've been able to train those people. They've been able to do English skills in Litmos. So there has been a lot more. We've extended our L&D out to them, and we've also extended a career path out to them, which we didn't do prior to Litmos at all.
Wonderful. I see Martina's got a question in the chat as well, asking, how are you putting your documents online as you were making that shift? Were they SCORM e-learning modules, PDFs, other resources?
When we first introduced it, we pretty much moved from a PowerPoint because we were trying to keep it nice and everybody being comfortable with the familiar. So we pretty much moved them just into a PDF form, or we'd just upload the policy, if that makes sense. The second year of that, we started to, once, as I said, we got Steve really involved, the safety guy, we started changing them, and we started then going downstairs into the factory and taking videos of those guys in the factory actually doing what we were training. We started to take photos of them bending and lifting and whatever they had to do, doing the forklifts. We started taking those videos, so we were making it real for them. And we started the next integration of the training, where we were moving it from being a PowerPoint to actually, with stick figures more or less on it, to actually being real life down in our production team. And we were actually taking real life people who worked with us for a very long time. And even if it was how they gowned up, we would be like, okay, how do you get ready to go in? What's the safety procedures you need to do? We were taking videos and photos of them that way. So we really has been an integration. We didn't start at where we are now. We really started slowly in, okay, let's just upload PowerPoint presentations. Now, how do we make that better? And so every year it was just getting bigger and bigger and better and better.
It's wonderful. And you know, you've talked about really, I kind of always say taking that approach to measure twice and cut once, as you were really looking at what the needs were, as you were engaging your managers and leadership into what was going to be needed for training all these different roles and functions within Lindt. Did you encounter any challenges or any resistance from your employees having to go through the training as you were making some of those transitions, or perhaps it was, you know, going from those mandatory, you know, instructor led altogether, or, you know, making that shift to online? Did you encounter any issues or resistance with that?
I think we did originally, and probably not in our retail team. Our retail team were always on board, so they're a bit different demographic. So we didn't find it as much in our retail team. Within our manufacturing and production team, certainly we did, because it was like, we work a line, that's all we do. We know how to work our line. Why do we need to do all of this extra training? The other part with our labour hire staff as well, they didn't do as much training and they weren't part of the team. So what we were finding in manufacturing was there was a segregation of an us and them. I'm actually a Lindt employee on the production line. I'm a person that's a labour hire. So there was so what we then went down and said, well, this can't happen, because if we want to have a great culture and we want to live our values, and one of our values is collaboration, we can't just ignore the fact that we've got one group who are feel a bit more privileged because they're an employee of ours compared to a labour hire staff. So we actually then moved across and bringing all of those individuals. Now, there was a bit of resistance there, because it was like, oh yes, but I'm the Lindt employee and they just come in and visit us. But some of those core staff people, the labour hire, they were working with us for not just a few weeks. They were working for us. Some of them had been with us for 18 months. So technically, they were choosing to come back when they had the offer of, okay, where would you like to work as a labour hire person? They didn't want to join our team. So it was like, how do we incorporate them to be part of our team? So it was really important from the people and culture point of view. So there was a bit of pushback there. But I think once they saw the benefit, and once they saw, actually, you're not just a production line worker for us, you are fundamental and one of the most important sections of our business, because without you, we don't sell chocolate. Without you manufacturing and packing, we don't sell chocolate. So it was really getting them to understand that piece and how their involvement and the impact they had, because it was getting them to see the bigger picture, that they weren't just manufacturing and putting things in boxes. It was then connecting the dots. We actually did a Lindt LMS session with them about, this is the benefits and this is the impact you have. So that was another good thing that Litmos allowed us to do. It was allowed us to tailor an onboarding and learning path that was suited to them. And so we were actually able to say to them, this is what happens when you pack chocolate. This is where it goes. And here's all the points it meets to before it meets our customer. And it got them to understand the importance of the role they played. And so that got them in more engaged, that there was more that they could do within Lindt, and they felt valued.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, that's exactly it. When they feel valued, they feel connected to the organization, and they're able to participate in that way. One of our other questions we have in the chat that kind of is, you've just already kind of touched on it, is just about the how has quality changed with training at Lindt since you moved online? You mentioned earlier just kind of starting to create some of those training paths for different individuals. What are some other things where you've seen or experienced some success in terms of quality?
I think one of the good things that we're allowed to do is getting other people engaged in the training. In quality, sorry, can you help me understand? Do you mean in quality of what's on the platform, or quality in the work that people are doing?
You know, I'm gonna say, I don't know what the person who posed the question wanted, but I'm gonna say let's do both if you can, just because I kind of can see where they're intertwined.
Okay, so if we're looking at quality on the platform, as I said, we pretty much started with, as I said, I think people think that Lindt is such a huge organization that there's thousands of dollars that are spent on L&D, but as I said to you earlier, within Australia, we weren't that. So it was, how could we start from here, but have a really good strategy of where we wanted to end up. So it was very clear from that perspective. And also, look, I have to really sing out to Matt, who I think is on the line somewhere, but Matt Wilcox, who is part of Litmos, who we regularly were meeting with and saying, this is what we need to achieve. How can we do that? How can we get it better? So we would start off with something going, oh, this is it, but actually having that resource in Matt which was a wonderful resource, was able to actually say to us, actually, you could do this. And I've seen other organisations do X, Y, and Z. So we were actually building off learnings from others as well, just from using, our consultant, Matt. And that was really, really beneficial for us. So we actually saw the integration of being a PowerPoint. And as I said, when I first started at Lindt, what we were doing is just putting up a policy. And so, as we all know, if you just put up a policy, people just click through that policy and it's like, I've done it. And people were saying, oh, I don't know how they've read like a 20-page policy within 5 seconds. And it was like, well, because they haven't read it and they haven't gained any learning from it. So it was really progressing it from that point. So I think there's been a lot of integrations of where we started to where we are now. And it didn't take a lot. And that's the other interesting thing about using Litmos. It doesn't take a lot. It's easy for Nicole to grab a camera, don't go downstairs or go out into one of our stores and actually start videoing the content. So it was really just your creativity within the team and understanding what each of the team leaders wanted to achieve. In regards to how we've improved our production, as I said, we get audited by Global. They're pretty stringent when it comes to manufacturing. And obviously our compliance within the Australian government is also pretty stringent, which I'm sure it is around the world. We've seen our quality go up from those lines not being shut down as often. So we're not seeing a close down of lines because people are doing training. We have, touch wood, Nicole, we have over a 1,500-day safety, no accidents within our production lines. We will touch. And when we did have one previously, it was because it was a head office person that went downstairs. So it wasn't actually our production line. But we've seen our safety go through the roof. Which is really fundamentally important. We've seen no accidents. We've seen no lost time accidents within over 1,500 days, and that's pretty remarkable in a manufacturing. We've also seen that we've received the highest, so we lead the world now in safety within Lindt, and that's pretty much due to the training that they're receiving and how it's been delivered to them. And in fact, that to the much so that the world is saying, what are you doing and how can we copy? Mm-hmm. And then within our compliance, within the government sort of regime, we're leading that too. We will always be sitting within the 95% mark, which wasn't happening before. It was high. It was always in the 80s, but it was never at that highest compliance. So I think we've seen both ends of the scale, really positive moves.
Yeah. One of the things that I like so much about your story is you've talked a lot about not being able to solve everything all at once. I'm hearing a lot about scalability, right? And looking at, okay, what can we do today? And how are we going to continue and to refine that and being able to do that with a small team? Because I think sometimes L&D professionals, if they're the only one, that can feel a little overbearing sometimes, a little overwhelming. And so I love how you've talked about how you've continued to refine that strategy over time, because we know good L&D is iterative and it's recursive and it's going back and constantly making improvements when we're able to and making those necessary adjustments. And I think in doing so, I mean, you've talked a lot about being able to demonstrate, return on investment, right? You've got some of those metrics to show how training is having a direct impact on health and safety within your manufacturing. And I think that's incredible. That kind of leads into my next question that I have for you, which is, what are some of the different types of metrics that you're using for L&D, or perhaps and if it's easier to talk about how you're linking those with any of your other HR metrics as well. But what are some of those metrics that you're pulling from now from your L&D efforts?
I think one of the easiest things, so if I look within the manufacturing, and they all have their 5 S's and all of that sort of safety, and they have meetings every day. One of the key things that was really good about Litmos is actually we will pull reports. And previously, being a lean team, we can't pull reports for everybody who wants them. And then do what they want us to do, analyze them the way they want us to analyze them. So what was good about it was we were able to pull those reports. They've actually developed their own Excel tools where those reports are now being dumped into, and it's creating all their spread charts and their graphics and everything that they need. So that's done on a daily basis. And it's really, we just set it up, and every morning at 8 o'clock, it gets sent through to them. So that's helping them understand where who has completed on the line their training, who hasn't. It helps the managers prior to going onto the line to understand, oh, Robin's on the line today. I can see that she hasn't completed this part of safety. I'll be able to manage my time to give her that piece. Rather than seeing that I've got 8 people not on the line, not completed. So, and I'm going to have to shut down my line. So that was making it a lot easier from that way. So we're pulling those sort of compliance pieces. Retail are doing similar. They have their own, we have a BP who heads up our retail section within the HR department. So she'll pull that information. So food safety, they're really looking after, but also their work health and safety. I think one of the interesting things that we're really getting engaged in now from a metrics point of view is looking at mental health, which is becoming really big for us at the moment. And so it's really helping us see, we're able to go in who is accessing some of the mental health workshops that we have and online pieces. So that's been really good. We need to, so Lindt Global is very stringent on our regulations, and we have to send through all of our data of who's been and any learning courses, what their development has been, whether it be internal and external. So that all gets sent through globally. It's a massive report that Nicole pulls every year, and it gets sent through of how many hours we've invested back in our people. So Litmos allows us to do that easy, because even if they've done an external course, they're actually able to load those hours into the training and say, I've done an external course, it took me a whole day to do, or I've done, the guys that are doing their accountancy courses, I've been doing this external course, so they can pull that data. So that's made it real. I mean, that's been life-saving for us, because that was like a, no word of a lie, that was about 50 pages long with lots and lots of data in it that we were just having to pull manually. We don't have to do that anymore. We just pull that report at the end of the year. So from those sort of metrics, it's made our life much easier. It's taking a job that would usually take Nicole a week to do and pull that data. It's taking it down to just taking, to be fair, it would take probably 10 minutes to pull the data, and then probably another 2 hours to work through that data to put it in a format that suits Lindt.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. And it's nice that you've got it all in one consolidated place as you're storing that data and being able to access it when you need to do those reports. Have you experienced, have you received feedback from your Lindt employees on these training initiatives and in your L&D strategy in terms of like your employee engagement surveys or employee retention?
So we do, Lindt does surveys every 3 years globally. We will do a survey and it does touch on our training and development. And we also do pulse. So in between those, we'll do our own pulse surveys. So they're done every October. We've seen at least a 30% shift in our numbers across the board within Lindt Australia from an L&D perspective, so much so that it's no longer sitting as an action plan item within any of our departments. So that's really nice to see. It's also nice to see that within our production and retail teams, they're also feeling like they're getting some genuine training and development. So certainly we've seen a big impact from that point of view.
One of the things that I think anytime I talk to any L&D professional, return on investment, what are those metrics that are really demonstrating the value in L&D? And you've talked about several different metrics that you've been able to use successfully at Lindt. Can you walk us through how you've created some of those L&D course modules, how you've distributed learning, and how you're measuring some of those learning outcomes? I realize they're going to be different depending on different programs, but would you mind sharing some examples with us? As I know, anytime you mention metrics, I think every L&D person's ears just perk up a little bit, wanting to hear more about your success.
So I suppose if we take the retail team, so instead of talking about production all the time, let's talk about the retail team. So our person that's heading up that team from an L&D perspective, she has really started. The nice thing about Litmos is we've been able to scour and have a look at what is being provided. That's already been developed, so we don't have to recreate the wheel. And then we've just started to develop an onboarding tool that really meets the needs of the retail team. and hitting all the goalposts that they need. So they do mystery shopper within, and what does that look like, and what the numbers are looking like for that point of view. So we had previously within the retail team probably 4 other platforms that the managers were giving information from. We've now narrowed that down to 2, one being our intranet, but the other being Litmos, so our LMS, which we call our Excellence Academy. So on our Excellence Academy, we really divide, here's what the training needs to be, here's what our compliance numbers need to be, so some of them in food safety. So we've developed a really clear learning path for each of them, but not only for just a retail learning path, but we've also developed a casual retail learning path. We've developed a person who's a part-timer learning path. And when we talk about a casual learning path, what we did was who's studying out there, because a lot of those guys that are out there are at university and it's their part-time job, but who's studying out there, and what can we give them back whilst they're here? So if they're studying marketing, we can actually send through the Litmos platform, who's studying, what are you doing, and what would you like to see on the platform? So we've actually tailored that metrics as well, where they've actually said, well, I'm doing marketing, and we understand, okay, if there's a great pool of people studying marketing, what are the tools there that we can send through to them and say, are you interested in completing this course? And what are some other things that you'd like to do? And we've also started to create some podcast type work within Litmos that will go out to those, so those guys can jump on and actually have conversations with. So that's pretty cool as well.
That's fantastic. That's really tapping into your asking your learners, what do you want? That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I think from that point, what do they want? Not only what do they want, but they may not be long-term employees with Lindt. What we want them to leave with is, I'm really pleased I went to Lindt, and what they gave me in my career was beneficial. So even if they're just finishing university, what could we give that casual employee? So we've developed learning streams for each of those. So the casual employee, the part-time employee, those who are moving on to shift supervisors, assistant managers, and we will measure each of the, gauge their metrics and engagement, because we can see if an assistant manager is really getting engaged with the course, or if they're struggling with it, by the completion rates. And we're able to then follow up. So the BP will then follow up going, hey, Robin, looks like you're struggling with this module. How can I help you? Or why hasn't it been completed?
And you've mentioned several times already in our conversation today about Lindt's strong culture, which values growth and learning of your people at Lindt. Perhaps if we can move to the next slide, would you mind just sharing with us what Lindt's values are, and how you've seen L&D be able to contribute to help foster those, or where you've seen that integration?
So our purpose is to enchant the world with chocolate, and so that's what we all strive and live to do. And around that is our 5 values, being excellence, innovation, entrepreneurship, responsibility, and collaboration. So within excellence, what we found is that's really not only just the compliance piece, but it goes beyond that, is what does good customer service look like? But not just a generic version of, here's a module, off you go, or here's a PowerPoint, but actually getting in with our team. And we're able to actually upload with some of our really primary high caliber managers and say, tell us what excellence looks like, and create videos and information that will help other employees to see this is what excellence looks like. And we've been able to do that within every department, and also within our production team. So this is what excellence looks like on a line. And we strive for excellence in everything we do. We want our customers and consumers to walk away feeling like they've had the best time in the world within our outlets. Within innovation, I think where it's been a bit different in that people within a production line and within retail can't. What does innovation mean? I can't be any different than I come in every day and be. But, we started to create modules where we were looking at those individuals. Well, you can be innovative, because if you find a better way of doing something, this is what it means to you. So we actually have a whole lot of modules that we developed on the LMS that are going, excellence, what does excellence mean? What does it look like? But for every department. Innovation, what does it look like? And how can you be part of the innovation? Because just because you're on a production line doesn't mean that you don't have great ways of how we could do things better. You're also a shopper for us. You're also going to our retail stores and into our wholesale stores. So you will know what that looks like and how you can offer suggestions. So we do that. Entrepreneurship's been exactly the same. Responsibility. We have a big responsibility around the planet and how we can, but responsibility goes beyond that for us. It's about, we have a responsibility to each other, and what does that look like? So we've been able to create modules that really are niche for every department that can bring our values to life. And we have created modules that, and also the other thing that we've done that's really cool, I think, is that we'd have entrepreneurship, and we go, what is entrepreneurship within Lindt production? What does entrepreneurship look like within Lindt retail? So we've been able to do that, but we've then also been able to embed other resources. So if there's some cool books that we'd like people to read, or if there's some really good webinars on the on LinkedIn, or if there's a webinar that we can know that's around about that we would like you to jump on, a TED talk, we'll actually give them access to that so they can foster their own growth and learning. So it's not just stops there. So we'll actually give them all those tools, which is we've been able to create within this module, which is really good.
That's fantastic. As you're looking forward for Lindt Australia, what recommendations do you have for companies that are trying to develop effective L&D strategies?
I would suggest that people know what their customer wants. And look, we always want, when we look at a platform, we always want more. I think that's the unique thing that I will say with Litmos, is that you have the opportunity to put out, hey, I'd really like this, or this is a new tool, have you thought about this? So, and they'll actually start developing it. So that's really cool. But I think we always want what we don't, the little bits that we don't always have, but it's like, what does every department need? So start there, start understanding what your customer needs, because what's really cool for me as an L&D might be this whole big graphic piece, but that's actually not what's needed within a production team. They want something totally different. So I think from a strategy point of view, start there, start understanding what your customer wants. And then look at what the future could be, and start small. As I said, we didn't start with a whole lot of whiz-bang videos to begin with. What we started with was, let's just slowly transfer it on. When we saw teams were picking up a lot quicker, we actually then engaged with those team leaders and said, hey, we could do this. Would you like us to do this for you? We made them accountable as well. So getting some champions within every department was really, really important. So especially within production and retail teams. So getting a champion there saying, hey, I'm engaged and I'm going to actually take ownership, because what we tend to see within L&D is the HR department run it. The HR department grabbed the analytics, the HR department feedback, and we didn't want a system that would do that. So we actually started with, this is what you can do. This is how you can pull your own data. This is how you can develop your own teammates. And so that was really vitally important as well. So we took champions and we started slowly. I think we all want the big golden egg at the end, but we realized we couldn't get there. We had to take the small chunky steps to first with, and we had to take people along the journey with us.
I think that's a great example too of just how to improve efficiency by, empowering those managers and supervisors to be able to take some ownership of that too, rather than expecting HR to do everything as you're already wearing multiple hats. Just thinking about, as you've talked about scalability and kind of, continuing to make these, refinements and adjustments over time. Looking back on it now, if you could wave a magic wand or make any adjustments, knowing what you know now or knowing what's been working now, is there anything you would have changed getting started?
Well, that's a good question. I think we engaged with some top level managers to start with, and we probably should have gone to the lower level. So if I look at a production line and a manager line, when we asked what were the needs, we went to the national manager and we went to the state manager, but we never actually went down. It took us a long time to go down to the actual manager of our store or the manager of our lines going, what do you need? And so I think if I was to go back again, I would have actually got their resource and their input as well, going, what do you need? What does it look like? And how can we support you? Because we did go more top line. We did like the leaders of teams rather than actually going into employees. I would have got more of the engagement from employees of what they were looking for and what they needed. So I think we would have gone back and we would have done that a little differently. We would have incorporated more people rather than just I mean, the EC were always on board, but we went down to like senior managers and manager level. We probably should have gone down lower than that.
Is another question I just have, because it just sounds you've done such an excellent job with engaging people though early on and really empowering them. How often do you meet with them? Do you meet with the managers quarterly about L&D efforts? Do you meet with them annually? Is there a way that you're touching base so that you kind of have an understanding of what their future needs are going to be, or what to look for into like the next business quarter or the next fiscal year?
So we would have a yearly review that happens every year. And as I said, previously production didn't have any yearly reviews on them at all, but they do now. And purely because of introducing online learning, that was the next byproduct of that. We would do that every year. And from that, we then create a big list of these are all the L&D pieces that we're finding that are common within our IDPs and within our goals for the year and the gaps. So we do succession planning as well. And so here's the gaps within our employees. We would then go back at the beginning of the year and say, this is what we're looking at creating. Are we missing anything? Is there anything that we need for you? And they would certainly then give us that feedback. So predominantly we will design the courses around that. But we have VPs that head up each of those departments. One of them heads up a few of the departments, but they will meet every month. And every month they'll talk about their people. We also have we use a 360 tool that everybody in our company has to do. So we engage with them, every individual at that time as well. And that includes our production team and our retail team. So we would engage with those people as well. So it's a constant thing. It was once only yearly, but that just doesn't hit the mark well enough. And we found that we needed to engage far more regularly than that. So our VPs would meet with everybody once the plan's put in place. But if we said, hey, what we're finding from a safety perspective is X, Y, and Z, we're having a lot of, trips or falls within the field, we need something, we would quickly jump on board and develop an L&D online learning tool. And that for the field team, online's really important. It's vital for them because they're never in the one place at the one time, because they're out in stores like our, supermarkets building material there. So it's really important that they have an online resource.
Wonderful. What does the future look like for L&D at Lindt?
Oh, look, I think we've just hit the surface, really. We've just scratched the surface. I think there's so much more. When I'm looking at some of the I think we had a meeting with Matt, our Litmos consultant, a few weeks ago, and it was like we were learning about all the new stuff, the AI stuff that's coming out that we're really excited about. So I think we're just scratching the surface of what could be. I think, as I mentioned earlier, people just assume that if we're a Lindt, we're a big organisation that must have had this machine of L&D behind it, and we're not. We're really tiny. There was just me for a couple of years. Now I've got Nicole. So there are just two people. And so the ability that we can create so much more, and the tools and the technology and the upgrades that we're seeing coming through Litmos is really exciting us. The fact that we're looking at tailoring every platform to be individual or unique to the department, so we can get a retail that when they open it up, the look and feel, that excites us, that's coming about. And AI certainly, AI is going to be the way and the change of the world, to be fair. And so how can L&D get better from that perspective through AI?
That's fantastic. I think this is such a great success story too, being able to show other L&D professionals, especially those working in those smaller organizations, that you can do it with a team of one or a team of two. And I think it's by engaging and empowering others within the organization to collaborate and to take ownership of some of that L&D process. I think that's sometimes the challenges that we have. Advocating for L&D it shouldn't just rest with the L&D or the HR teams, depending on how we're set up within different organizations. Everyone should be advocating for that and seeing the impact on that one.
Yeah, I think the nice thing with Litmos that we've been able to do is that it's helped create our culture, in the sense that prior to that, people didn't get the look and feel. They get to be able to tap in. We're able to get our CEO to do his own video. He's done a video for retail. He's doing a video for production that's relatable to all of them, and they can access it anytime. We're able to use it to send out our talks that we have in our town halls. We're able to upload all of those videos, and it's reaching out further than saying, hey, we're having a town hall. If I'm a field person or I'm a retail, I don't get access to that. And if it's not, so it's actually been able to give us some access to that, and not only just dumping the video up of the town hall, but actually going, hey, here's some key points that have come out of that town hall. Yeah. And make it graphically appealing enough that it's like, oh, I'm engaged. And so it's really helped us create a culture and build our culture of what Lindt is, and especially with our values. And we're able to link it back to all of the values all the time by adding it into the content and the wording that we're doing. So it's been really, because when you get somebody that's just delivering it, you don't know that they're hitting the mark and making sure our values are there, and they're not saying, it might just be delivered, here it is in 2 minutes, here it is in 2.5 hours, where this tool has actually allowed us to deliver our values out to our people at every corner, whether we're in WA, and to think for us from Sydney to WA is a 3-hour flight. How do we hit one store in WA? Because that's all we have, a group of 8 people, and we're actually able to do that.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's great too, because you're utilizing a lot of different training formats to get that message out there, to reinforce those values and to get that Lindt branding and messaging out to all of your employees, which is so important for them to be able to feel connected to the organization and to see how is this connecting to those values and the work that they're doing. I want to be sensitive to the time, because I know we're nearing the end of the hour, but we have one final question that I'd like to ask you. Campbell was asking in the chat, what feature in Litmos had the greatest impact on your LMS admins so they could spend more time that's value added?
I think the ability to create content in different ways was really, really important. That had the greatest impact. So, and being able to use the tool Litmos so that we can, so if I look at myself, I have dyslexia, so I'm very visual. I like things to look visual, and the ability that our admins could actually create content that could meet everybody's needs really excited them. I think the easiness for our admins to gain information and pull it back and understand where everybody was sitting from a career perspective was really, really important. But I think that would be the greatest impact that it would have had, the feature would be that there wasn't one feature, we could actually develop it to make suit everyone's needs, to the point that we now support Japan and we now support China on Litmos, because we're actually able to create it into their language. So it was actually really cool tool to be able to do that as well. So I think there were lots of things that we were able to utilize that got different of our teams excited. For our admins within our production team, it was that they could pull compliance data really, really easy. And they didn't have to go, hi, Robin, can you pull my compliance data today and can I check it? They could do it. They start at 6 a.m. in the morning. I'm an early riser, but I'm not in the office by 6 a.m. They could pull that data then, and they were able to. So I think that was really beneficial as well.
And that also just helps contribute to that efficiency and effectiveness of workplace performance. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us. We're so happy that you're using Litmos, and we're so happy to learn more about your L&D strategy. And we wish you the best of luck as you're moving into the future of L&D at Lindt, whatever that next chapter's going to be. Thank you, everyone in our audience, for joining us today. This is being recorded, so the recording will be posted on LinkedIn as well as Litmos's website. And so just thank you so much for sharing your story, Robin and Nicole. This has been really helpful and really enjoyable to hear.
Thank you for having us. And if anyone wants to email me or wants more information, I'm more than happy to share. L&D definitely a passion. So I'm more than happy to share our journey. If anyone has any questions, if you send them through, that would be great.
Thank you.